Anyway, well, hey, we're going to jump onto this. We got some folks that are still joining. Good to have you here from wherever you might be around the country. We get a lot of folks from a lot of different places overseas as well. And so wherever you're from, welcome. We're going to jump right into the 6 categories of training our Sunday school teachers. I'm going to just click through some slides and let you kind of fill in blanks on a blank piece of paper that you have. Our kid men pictures here, there's a few of them you'll see. This training that we did just last year before the COVID, and so that's kind of what some of the photos would be. You're in the right place and here it is. Your local church needs more workers, and I don't know anyone that doesn't need more workers. That seems to be an important one. If your current volunteers are new, to ministry, and it's always great to get some teacher that's been broke in and really knows what they're doing, been there for a long time, and they can do a lot of things. They still need training. Your local training, we'll go through that in a minute. But new people need to be trained. But if you got a lot of new ones, you need a lot of training. Your current volunteers are doing their own thing way too much. And this is sort of a hidden problem that we have. I have pastors I talk with, and their Sunday school teachers are not, they're spending too much time teaching and no relational time or no time for the kids because they're just speakers and they want to speak nonstop, and the kids are bored to death. And then you have the flip side where it's like someone will teach read a short little Bible parable, a lesson or whatever, and then let kids play for 45 minutes. It's like, they're not doing what you want. And so we're going to talk about that. Or if you just need to train better ones and you need some more ideas, we're going to give you plenty of ideas here. In fact, we will run out of time, I'm sure, before we run out of ideas here. So anyway, I'm up here in the studios, the top of that building you see there on the right-hand side. That is our headquarters out here in Wyoming. We're in an old hotel, and I found a picture of a backpacking thing I did a couple of years ago now, and it was a lot of fun, and took a picture of the sun going down, and just typical little selfie. But that's me a few years back. We do a lot of outdoorsy stuff with our kids, and you'll see some of those pictures as we kind of work our way around. So I'm the founding pastor. We have a new senior pastor in charge who is doing a tremendous job, and all this training type stuff. As we talked about this at our staff meeting on Tuesday, went through a lot of these kind of things. So I'm going to throw up a Q&A thing here. Every once in a while it looks like that. That's just a reminder for you to go, hey, I had a question about how you did that or this or that. So that's just a reminder. We'll probably hit most of the Q&A at the end. And we'll take as much time as needed to cover and help you as much as possible. Here's a question. Why train workers? Why do we want to train workers in the first place? And I'll throw these up on the screen here. A common complaint is 95% of the people are doing 5% of or 95% of the work's being done by 5% of the people. Talked to a guy this week, that was almost word for word what he said, and he just doesn't have people, motivated and doing stuff, and so we want to train them and get them so that at least they have the capacity to do some of that. And by the way, part of training is motivation, and when you put people on a team, as we'll show pictures a little bit later, and you start to get them to be part of a ministry team and they're working together, they want to serve. There are some lazy people out there in the world, I'm sure, but we don't have any at our church. They want to serve, and we motivate them and share with them a lot of different things. Also, well-trained ministry teams are just better. I mean, they're better than non-trained, okay? I mean, if you went to a tire store and the guy didn't know how to run the tire thing to change your flat tire and you waited for 4 hours because he couldn't figure it out, it's like, what is going on? Or if you went to the store and you were checking out and the person didn't know how to run the cash register, it's just like not very good. And so we, in that sense, we are the business model of a church does come through. I mean, I understand the local church is not a business in the same way, but we need to have our people trained. So if someone says, where's the bathrooms, or where's the nursery, or, can I find a Band-Aid for my finger? And you're like, I have no idea. Your ushers are like, I don't know. That's not a good thing. Better, well-trained people know exactly what's going on is the very best. The next thing here is if local church, we believe, that we need to train them because we believe this is a part of discipleship. A disciple in this day and age is going to be part of a vibrant local church, and they're going to be, doing things and being involved in local church, and we want to train them. So those are the why reasons, and I think we probably know some of that. The benefits of some of this, and I'll just throw all of these up here real quick so you can kind of see them. When you start to get the discipleship going with people, you get really clear objectives, like why are we doing what we're doing? We'll go through this right at the end when we get into the 6 categories. It also teaches your people good management, everything from making sure there's supplies and they're ready to go. I mean, if your people are well trained and you go, hey, this week we're going to do this, we're going to color, if it's things with kids, it's like, well, do we have crayons? Okay. No, we don't have any. Well, someone go to the store and buy them. I mean, you need some of that. Also, punctuality is a huge issue in a lot of churches. And we want to make sure that that our people are there on time. And when they're well trained, they come early because they're bought into what is going on and they're ready to go. And then, of course, just this idea of delegation. All of our workers are out there finding more people to work, and they're kind of passing things off because you have trained them. Then they take training seriously at their level, and they kind of pass some of that on. So just an excellent little illustration there. As a reminder, too, and Tanim, real quick, tell them again, we got a few more people have jumped on. The chat box there is on the right, or if you're on a phone, I think it's actually below the picture and everything. But tell them how to do that, and then we'll jump into the categories of workers here.
Yeah, if you got any questions at all, go ahead and ask them as you've got them. There's nothing worse, I remember, from high school than having a question, and then when it's time, the teacher says, okay, are there any questions? And you raise your hand and you go, I don't remember. And that's one of the worst feelings in the world, especially since you know it was important at the time. So go ahead, write down your questions in the chat box right away as they come to mind. Don't wait until the end, and I will see them, and we can address them at the appropriate times then, so you don't forget your questions, because there's nothing worse than that. Also, you should have another tab showing there. With a document that we put up there that you can download there. That is the 6 categories that Mike's going to be talking about here. So you go ahead, download, print, and keep that. I may or may not be throwing a couple of polls up during the course of this. They'll show up there, and unfortunately, with our polls, you only get to answer once.
And we do have some links that we're going to put up for some training resources for you. So you came to the right place. We're going to get you some links to help you out. So yes, continue to write in the chat box there and let us know where you're from and how cold it was. I think that was the question that was out there. Let's jump into who are the workers. I'm going to go through the categories of workers here, and I'm going to put these up. Because we're going to deal with kid and youth ministry type. This will be Sunday school workers, nursery workers, teen workers, that entire category. But we want to broaden this out a little bit because really all volunteers need to be trained. You do have a group of people that would be kind of fall into the general category of janitorial, setup, takedown. In other words, they're not presentation people. But they're very important workers doing some of those things, and they need to have some training as well. We'll go through some of that. Here's another one. These people are a little bit more in front of people or do interact, and they need some training. These are your hospitality type people, your greeters, if you have refreshment system kind of going, and any type of security personnel that you have at your church. They need to be trained and know very much a lot of the different things that are going on. Another category would be production type people. This would be like your sound booth people and, people that are playing music. And, I want you to start music now. When I point, you start, that's all that kind of stuff. There's training that goes with that. A lot of our churches now are very deeply into, some type of video or Facebook live streaming because of the COVID thing. And so there's a lot of that going on, and you want to spend time training those people, making sure that they know things. Now, your sound booth people probably don't need to know everything that your security people do, and your teachers need to know more of what to do with kids and, some of those things. So you'll have to kind of weigh all these things out and sort of balance it, but I'm giving you kind of some broader categories. One more is your outbound team. These would be people that are going out of your building. They're presenting things. They're either door knocking or they're, doing some type of visitation, distribution. There's a lot of things that go out, and those people really need a lot of training, and you want to spend some good time. Now, there would be other categories that would kind of slip between all of these, everything from like your administrative type staff. Yeah, go ahead, Tannen.
Yeah, on that outbound teams thing, those people, if they're not properly trained, they can cause massive liability issues for your church because they can say some things if they're not properly trained, or maybe do something that's inappropriate that could potentially get you in a world of hurt.
Yeah, they can do that. And then like the production people, if like somebody plugs the wrong thing in or turns the mic up or off or whatever, you suddenly have no sound, no video. Those can be really big, bad boo-boos, So those are all important areas. Like say some of your production people may not need training in like child protection policy and recognizing child abuse the way your kid ministry people would. So you'll have to kind of weigh some of these things out. And again, if you had administrative people in here, people who are, senior staff, in other words, paid staff at your church, you're probably going to be giving them all of this training and then some. They're having more. And there would be other little ministry groups. Like we have a large food ministry that doesn't really fall into any one of these. And those people need to be trained too. And so once you kind of get the training flavor going in your church and you start doing training, I'm telling you, every one of the team members starts to train their people. It's just really a very, very positive thing to get going. So those are our things. And again, if you have any Q&A time here, any questions about that, like, hey, what about this group or that group? Go ahead and type that in that chat box. Again, it's on your phone. It's at the bottom of your phone, or on a computer. It would be usually on the right-hand side, the way we have that set up. So we want to get into these training categories now, and each of these will take a little bit of time, and you'll be able to see them all. They'll be all 6 of them written down. So this is a great way to just take notes, and then you can put some sub-notes, sub-points under all of them. So a great big 1 through 6 would be kind of what you want to have. We just, like say, this is our training we went through in March of 2019. We had another one kind of planned for 2020, and that all kind of fell apart with the COVID thing. And now we're kind of just getting ready to put some training together because of the nature of our regulations and some of that. We're probably going to do it and put it more in the end of summer and train everybody and get ready, go through like a large training time for everybody. And that would be in August that we would get that ready for the fall campaign. You can have lots of different training times. We're not getting into the details. This happened to be a larger training event for our kid ministry where we just had all of our children's workers. This is nursery. This is all elementary age, and this is all middle school, high school people together. You will train each one of those in individual things. Getting them all together once a year is a really good idea. And if you need more ideas on some of that kind of stuff, you can stay in touch with us or get involved with our academy, the Reachkeep Academy. We teach a lot on this stuff right in there. So that was our last big training thing. The 6 categories, we're going to start out with just the The first one here we call emergency procedures, and people need to be aware emergency procedures. And I will. That says medical at the top. I'm sorry, Tana. Can you move me over there? I think I need to be the other corner for a minute there. I'm not sure if you get to that. Hey, there we go. All right. These are the four categories, big four categories that have to do with emergency stuff. And your people need to be trained medical. Okay. So that would be very simple. Like, what is going on, who is their primary, we always know this every Sunday, who is our primary medical person on staff. And we do not keep like a registered nurse on staff or anything, but we have people who have been through EMT training, advanced first aid. We have EMTs, we have doctors, nurse people. We always try to identify who those people are every Sunday. So if we have a major medical issue, in addition to calling 911 and some of those things, we have someone that can take care of that. That would also include, and this is probably one of the bigger questions that you get, is like, hey, I need a Band-Aid. A kid cut his finger, where are the Band-Aids? People need to know where that kind of stuff is. The aspirin and some of that. And along with that, you need to train your people of what they can give out and what they can't give out. If a kid comes up and says, I got a headache, I need a Tylenol, are you going to do that? Are you going to hand that out or not, without parental permission? So there's some training that needs to happen there. And a lot of discussion obviously needs to happen to figure out what to do there. The second one there is intruder. And this is just everything from the whole active shooter thing, which is very rare in America. I know there's been some, and I don't want to downplay it, but it's not happening all that often, to just regular intruders, people that walk into the church and are not part of the Sunday morning system. Good intentions or bad intentions. We happen to be in an old hotel, so we have people think that there's rooms, so they actually walk in and start looking around, and we have some training what to do with that, and we kind of show them around, let them take a few pictures, and then they leave. We had a guy who was drinking a couple of weeks ago actually walk into our children's program area. Our security guys took care of it very well. They were trained. They knew exactly what to do. And got him to the door, and he ended up walking down. I think he was looking for another building, but they knew what to do. The disaster training would be everything from where are the fire extinguishers? All your people need to know, some of the basics of fire extinguishers and any type of like fire alarms and fire emergencies and some of that. You need to have some discussion on all of that. We live in a
fire extinguishers either. They need to know where the gas cutoff is. Where all the circuit breakers are.
Yeah, and our security guys know some of that. Yeah, absolutely.
Intruders was last summer, had a couple of Bavarians riding through, and they were on bicycles. It was like 9:30 in the morning, and they stopped because they thought we were a bar. So we had
they pull in and use our bathroom lots of times. Yeah. We also happen to be on the bicycle route where people ride across America on a bicycle, and we are on that route and come right through our town. And there's not been a public bathroom for the last 45 miles probably. So yeah, we have that. So there's a lot of things. The disaster thing would also include, like say, major fire or tornado drill, depending on where you're at, and just need to talk about it. You don't necessarily have to run drills every Sunday morning. We are in a refinery town, so we have evacuation procedures for our entire town. At times, can be evacuated because of the proximity to the refinery. So we have things to do. Environmental things are what we call, like, there's a giant roof leak, there's a toilet that overflows, there's someone got sick and threw up all over the place. You need to have a plan for all of that. So those are kind of the first things, what we would call emergency procedures. And let's see, Tana, you can scoot me back over the other side there. I think I'll probably be good for now. The second part here is security and child protection policy things. And there's just a variety of things here that have to do, and this is a little bit more with the children's ministry, but your security people need to know this, probably not as much your sound people or your outbound people. They wouldn't need to know this, but there needs to be some level of, and the first one, I'll show you some pictures in a second, but the first one is child protection policy. Your workers need to have some training in that. They are not to be in a room alone, teaching kids. We have the 2 adult policy where we're at. We have, windows on the doors so people can kind of see in the rooms. There's a variety of things along that line. With teenagers, don't ever be alone with someone of the opposite sex. If there's any kind of counseling that needs to go on, you need to have another person there. You need to kind of sit in the middle of a great big room where there's a lot of activity if you're going to talk to somebody. All of that. There also is probably some child protection things that you need to look at concerning your insurance company. And if you are with Church Mutual or Preferred Risk or Guide One, I forget all the names of them, almost all of them have online training now that your Sunday school teachers and people can go through. And I want to encourage you to, take some time and go through some of that with your people. Make sure that you've got that kind of figured out. The security stuff too has to do with check in and check out stuff. And with children, we have we use a computerized check-in system that we have, and people need to know how to run that computer. We have a couple different computers around. We got the little hand scanner and the not barcode, but the little sticker that kind of prints it out. And so we have all of that kind of stuff, but sometimes it doesn't work. And then, so we have a backup system, and that's what the pad of paper is doing there. In fact, I think this is our check-in area for our kids program. We kind of made a little window where they kind of come up, and it's real obvious to when people come in where they need to check in. But on the left, we have a pad of paper there, so we can hand check in anybody at any time. These are kind of the regular kids that come. New kids would get their names written on, and then we have computerized check-in. But all of that takes some training. And on a Sunday morning is not the time to train for that. That needs to be done on an off time so that people are ready and they know what's going on and they know how to get the printer going, and or they just know how to check things in and out and who can pick up kids. I mean, the big thing that you'll find if you start yourself a church at reaching a lot of young families, what we call a Reachkeep kind of church, you are going to have people that are not allowed to pick up those kids. Do not let my, divorced husband come pick up the kids. Do not let the cousins take the kids home or whatever. There's a lot of do not do's that need to happen there. Don't feed my children. All of that needs to be in a nursery. Don't give my kids any food. They're gluten-free. Do not give them anything. They have allergy issues. Don't give them things. All of that needs to be noted and taken care of, and people need to be trained really well to make all that happen. And a couple of boo-boos and those families are never coming back. Because you didn't take care of their family the way that you wanted. We had a few years back, we had a lady that was, her and her family were being transferred. They were integral part of the church. They were involved at every level. And she said, can I meet with some of you staff people before we leave? I just wanted to kind of talk to give you a couple suggestions. And she was not a critical person, but she came and we talked about the nursery, and she gave us a couple pointers about the nursery because she had young children. And she said, additionally, I got to tell you something. She said 2 different times when I specifically said I do not want my children to have any food, they were fed food. They were given something to eat. And, it was like, oh, we are so sorry. And nothing happened, and I don't know if it was an allergy or a sugar thing, or they were just upset stomachs. I don't know. But I'm glad she told me. Anyone else just wouldn't come back. And there's a reason people don't come back to your church, and it's not, well, it's the doctrine. They can't handle the truth, all those kind of lines. And a lot of it's like your nursery is terrible, and your Sunday school teachers are caustic, and they don't talk to the kids or listen to the kids or let them go to the bathroom, or you don't have a system for that. And we need training in all those areas. So we've got to work on that type of thing. So that is that security and child protection policy. And we have child protection policy. They actually watch videos and sign off that they've watched them. And that's a very, very important thing. So let me jump to the next one here, moving along, skills training. This is such an important one, and taking time to just really train your people in some of the things that you want them to be trained in. Now, this is where it really varies based on, and I've got, here are those like 6 categories of your workers. I mean, your security people are going to need to know different kind of skills. In other words, like Tannen was saying, where the breakers are and the water valves. The other day when we froze up and it was so cold we froze up, I had a couple of our guys shut the water valves off so that we didn't, if it thawed out during the service, we did not have a giant fountain squirting all over the place. So there's got to be some skills training in some of those areas. Hospitality people need to be trained in greeting one another, all that, and talking to each other. We have a way that we greet people that we like to do. If there's ever an area, and we get a lot of question on this, and a lot of people like, hey, I could put this on video and I could just train this, and then I can train everybody and they can just watch a video at home rather than have them come. And I'll talk a little bit about training towards the end and kind of getting people together. There is so much value at having people together. And when you train them online, there are some downsides to that. But the skills training is an area where online training can work. In other words, this is a procedural skill. This is how you do a particular thing. This is how you teach memory. For example, memory verses for children. I can probably give you a dozen different ways to teach memory verses to children, and that could be put on video, and then people could watch that. And so that would be really, really good stuff. In fact, along that line, I'll get to it here in just a minute. And when I do, I'll have Tanim share some links on there with you. We have some skills training for you that we have pre-recorded in a podcast kind of format, and we'll give those things to you. But skills training, it really would be different. Obviously, your sound production and booth people, man, they need a lot of training on how to run all that stuff. And I know very little about that, but they would need that. And your outbound people, if they're out there handing out tracts and visiting people, there's a lot of skill training that would go on along that line. I just was walking through the room a little while ago. I thought, there's a puppet thing. I took a picture of that. If your people want to learn how to do puppets, there are all sorts of YouTube videos that you could show them on how to do puppets, all that kind of stuff. There are skill trainings for that. Those are some fun things that can be done. We have a couple podcasts there. This is just a screenshot of one of them. Teacher training that we did. How to present the gospel in every message. How to put that in there. Here's another one, counseling a child for Christ, how to talk to children about spiritual things. I mean, that's a very, very important thing. We have links to 5 different training sessions that we're going to give you right now, and shoot those things out to you. And I think, do they show up in the chat box, Tanim, or how do they get those? Are you there? He disappeared. Okay, he might be posting those things. I'm not quite sure.
They are. They'll show up in the chat box.
Let me take a look.
Right-click on the link. You can then open a new tab. But if you simply left-click on it, let's see. Mike, I may not be here in a second. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm still. So even if
I see. Okay, I'm in the chat room and I see that you just posted one. So. And it looks like it's a live link, so you could open that up, and it should open in a separate tab. Yeah,
it open in a separate tab. I'm going to go ahead and post the rest of those now.
Okay, awesome. Anyway, those are some about evangelizing children and teacher training and some of that. So all of that is part of this skills training. Now, your skills training is going to get deeper in a lot of areas. And I want you kind of to sort of take some time to think this through yourself, where you want to go with some of this. But what skills do your greeters need to know? Well, if you would like to learn some of that, you can go on YouTube and type in church greeters, and there are some hilarious videos. There's some that are kind of sort of the funny ones, like this is not how to do it. And we try to train our people. So we've used some of those. I mean, that's just a simple way to do it. Your sound people need to be trained in that. Now, these are not areas where you're training where you as the lead pastor or whoever, and I don't know what all of you are here as far as in the ministry side of things, you don't necessarily have to train that. I could not train people in the sound and music production thing, other than the portions that I want, which is like when I get up there and I like say, put that slide up, or start that music or whatever, I want that to happen. So there's got to be some coordination on all of that. And that would be something. Tanim, did you want to add something on that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Because while we're talking about sound and video and training those guys, one of the things you have to train them to do, and you have to be okay with them doing for them to do their jobs properly, is they have to be trained how to properly smack the pastor's hand and tell him, don't touch that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I want to turn up the volume, you know. Yeah, there's got to be coordination between the speaking people and that would be part of that training. In other words, you can bring someone in and teach them all about the soundboard, but if he doesn't know what the pastor wants, I'll tell you one of the problems we have at our church, a very simple little issue, and when if I wear a clipped on microphone lavalier, when I am singing, and I lead the music a lot, when I was pastor, and even when I'm helping here, I might be singing. Someone has to turn that microphone off because my voice is not all that handsome, okay, as the rest of me. It's not all that good, and I don't want to be booming through the microphone.
You said it, I didn't.
So in other words, there has to be the coordination going on there. So that's a training session that needs to happen. And pastors can be like, oh, they didn't do the sound right. And it's like, well, did you train them? And, you know, if your teachers aren't doing good or they're doing their own thing, and a lot of this comes down to we failed to train them. And when you create a training type atmosphere church, like a Reachkeep church is, it's like you can have training going on all the time. You're going to be meeting people on Saturdays for this and that, and after, and some will be special meetings where everybody gets together, and it's more than just those few services that you have. People are getting together and doing stuff and learning, and they're growing, and it's just awesome when it starts to happen. But skills training is an important thing, and especially like janitorial. Teaching, I mean, you would think people know how to clean, but they don't necessarily know how to clean. And you cannot expect what you don't inspect. And you need to take time to inspect some of those things and say, I would like this done this way, or have someone else, that does it. And again, this is not necessarily the senior leadership needs to take care of this. But somebody has to say, we want the bathroom done this way. And we want this cleaned that way. And we want this heat turned on at this time and that time. And I want this set up that way. And you just take time to train people. And again, when you create the training atmosphere, it begins to be, very smooth type of thing, rather than being frustrated, like, oh, they never turn the heat on in time and we're so cold always. It's like you got to train the security people or whoever turns their heat on to make sure it's on time. So, all right, skills training. Let's talk about this one. Calendar, curriculum, content. This is a great big one that really has to do with your, if you're a Sunday school teacher, it has to do with you got to know what is going on. I'll give you a good example here in just a moment of something that kind of crosses everything that is a calendar issue. You need to know what your curriculum is ahead of time. We have pastors that complain and say, well, my teachers, they don't study their lesson until Saturday night, and I hear that all the time. They're not really prepared for their lesson. It's like, well, did they get their lesson? Do they get their curriculum way ahead of time? And then have they gone through it with everybody? And do they know what the content is and what the main thing is they're trying to teach that week? We go through and teach a lot of that kind of stuff. Let me give you just some pictures. Here's just a workers meeting. This is some of our people. We're sitting down going through some content stuff. We had a great big sermon series. The guy over there in the black shirt was a guest speaker. He was going to help me speak a couple portions of it, and I did part of it. And I remember sitting down and talking about that and how things were going to be different when we did that series. We have youth people in that meeting. There's janitorial people in that meeting. There's administrative people in that meeting, because it kind of covered a lot of different aspects. This is a Sunday school curriculum meeting. This is where you sit down ahead of time with your Sunday school teachers, and you just say, hey, where are we going? And they're actually in the Sunday school area where some of that was going to be taught. And we set up a bunch of tables, and they go, all right, let's talk about next week. Where are we going with this? Where are we going the next week and the next week and the next week and the next week? who needs what props, who needs what stuff, who needs, crayons, who needs paper. Oh, the copy machine's not working over there. Oh, thanks for telling us. We didn't know. All of that kind of stuff happens at this type of a meeting, and you're going through your bottom lines. What is what are you trying to teach your kids in a meeting along that line? So this is a meeting that needs to happen. And again, as I just walked by and took a picture of it, I'm not in this meeting. As a senior pastor, I'm not anywhere near this meeting. Now, I have directed that it should happen, and they got together and made it happen. I believe they did some of these on Saturday mornings, where they would talk about, okay, we're going to do this lesson. Let's change the decorations a little bit for our rooms. Let's kind of tweak this and tweak that. So all of that is part of this whole idea of the skill, or well, it kind of falls into skills a little bit, but it's kind of calendar and kind of a content, and sort of puts everything together, and people know where they're going. And let me give you an example, because this is something we did a few years back. We've done a baby dedication thing, and it's sort of, we got together and trained, and we went through, and because we did it, it worked so well. But it crosses a lot of the borders. It crosses the borders with the children's ministry, with the security people, and all that. So we have what we call baby dedication celebration, and we do it usually once a year. We're going to try to do it again coming up here. I believe this one is going to be a couple weeks after Mother's Day, probably around the 1st of June, something like that. So right off the bat, administrative people need to know that we're doing a special service, that this service is not just something tacked on, but the whole service is focused on this. And that there will be different sound requirements, because we're going to have parents up there, and they would need a microphone if they're going to do that. There's going to be different cleaning requirements, because we're going to do a special reception for everybody. There's going to be, coordination with the nursery, because the babies are in the nursery and they need to come out of the nursery into their mother's arms for that short amount of time, and then from there go back to the nursery. So there's got to be coordination with that. Little brothers and sisters that are in kids programs need to come over and see their baby brothers and sisters being dedicated, and their parents being prayed upon, and all that. So you see what I'm saying? The coordination goes all across that. So here were some of the families that we had. We had them come up front. They're holding their young ones there. We had the nursery had to bring those kids out. There's some older kids that came from the Sunday school room, so there had to be some coordination, and that's why you have a meeting for this type of thing. Afterwards, we rented another building, and we did a reception. And so we had setup people and takedown people that put these tablecloths and these beautiful flowers, and we had all grandparents come, and they invited their friends to come sit at their table and help them, kind of nurture their child, raise their child in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. So there was administrative things there. So there was meetings that had to do with that. Our AV people had to put things up on the screen. This is actually a photograph of a screen. And this is little Garrison, okay, and his parents. We asked them what they wanted him to learn and to grow up, and some values they wanted to put into him, and a favorite verse. So they found a verse there. It's on the bottom, and then they want him to be firm, independent, patient, kind, forgiving. And we talked about all that, and we prayed over the parents that they would be the ones that would be firm in their beliefs and independent, patient, kind, and forgiving, so that their child would become that way. But you see the coordination that goes through all that. That was all had the AV stuff. We had to put up admin stuff. We had to go out ahead of time and ask them to write a prayer. So this was the prayer that the parent wrote. We gave it to the AV people. They put it on a screen, the way that was done. We had grandparents that came from out of town to be at this thing, a big event. We had to coordinate some of that kind of stuff. You see what I'm saying? All of that stuff was part of our Baby D, and it takes a training meeting. And the reason it was so successful, and the reason people still talk about it, and the reason they can't wait to come to the next one, is because the training and the coordination was involved in it ahead of time. And so we want you to be a church that runs stuff like this, and really kind of gets that calendar and all that stuff coordinated, your content and all that is put together. And that's why we train. You just can't pull this stuff off. And so many times our churches just try to pull things off without, really taking time to train and get everyone coordinated. And it's not a good thing. So that's kind of the calendar, curriculum, content, kind of all put in, together into that category. And again, those would be different for all of those categories, the janitorial and hospitality, et cetera, et cetera. But that's how it works. Let's jump to the next one. This is the important part. And sometimes this one gets left out. It's the idea of nurturing and fellowship and team building. Your people need to be a team. Your Sunday school teachers all are doing the same thing. And they need to be bonded together and realize that whether they're teaching second grade or fifth grade boys, or they've got a unified class with first, second, third grade girls, first and second grade boys, however they are, that they are a team and they are working together. And to create this is the formation then of what we call ministry teams. And we have a couple podcasts. You can find those on the Reachkeep site on the formation of ministry teams and how to get those going. And this is kind of what we're talking about. This training is sort of puts people together. Like all those people sitting at that table in a few pictures back, they were all, they are team. I mean, some of those are best friends. They do so much stuff together. They work together. They serve together. And you want to have some of that. You want to have things where they just get together. In fact, this is kind of a funny picture because we're having a workers meeting with all these people. And two of our workers had been out deer hunting that morning. Okay. You can see them in camo on the right there, the husband and wife. They're all camoed up. And they showed up and came to the workers meeting because it's a team and they're part of the team. And that is such a powerful testimony to just be a piece of all putting all that together. You create these teams, you create groups of people that love each other and want to be together. And this is some of our workers here, that have been involved and help us run some of the different things. And we got all these cool shirts and they put all that stuff together. So a lot of neat things. Go ahead, Tanem. Did you have a question there?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and take a drink of water for a second? Let me talk a little bit on the team building thing here.
I'll take you up on that. Go ahead.
A lot of the different types of trainings and things that we do on-site works really, really well. But for the team building stuff, it is my personal opinion that off-site works better.
It's very good, yeah.
Go to the park or to somebody's house, fire up a barbecue. Everybody just sit together, play. They still even play lawn darts. I almost killed somebody with one of them when I was like 7.
Horseshoes. We're in the West. We play horseshoes. Yeah.
Croquet, set up a volleyball net, something, and just kind of get together. It doesn't. And the team building thing is one of those things that doesn't really have to be training to be training.
No, you're so right. Yeah, good point.
And have a barbecue and just become friends and learn about each other, and then you work together better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's like these shirts here. I am part of that. I mean, that was a little hashtag thing or teens came up with, and then a whole bunch of people said, "Hey, I want one of those. I want one of those. I am part of that shirts." And they took off like wildfire. It's just the whole idea of being together and having a good time. These are some of my best friends in the world right here in this photo. We're just doing some training together and creating some think we bought a whole bunch of shirts. Now, here's an interesting story. You're like, man, I can't afford all that kind of stuff. I think we got a picture of coffee cups here. Yeah, we got coffee cups for everybody on that one. But I'll go back to the shirt one here. I can't afford that kind of stuff. You know where a lot of this stuff comes from? The team members. They say, you know what? We need shirts. And I'm like, well, we could probably order them, but we don't know how to. We'll pay for them. We want that. All of these shirts here were paid for by a team member who said, you know what? I think our church needs this. We need to be all part. There's all our kid ministry people. And actually these shirts went to like everybody. And, but it's just a powerful, powerful thing. When you start to do this, like I'll have everyone in my house for a barbecue and I'll pay for all the meat. I'll cook all the food. It's not something the church necessarily has to do. It creates that team spirit and the teamwork and that camaraderie, like we are working together and the unity that is there. And then when you start to create that, they don't want to let each other down. No one's going to like, oh, I didn't prepare my lesson. It's like, no, I'm preparing my stuff. I'm going to be a security guy, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be there on that visitation team, and I'm going for that because I am part of that team. People show up when they become really bonded team members. They don't want to let everybody else down, and just, you know, having good times together. I mean, just some cool stuff. This was actually all four of these people are team members, and they all have their birthdays on the exact same day. So every year we would take pictures of them all doing birthday stuff together. And this was one of our kids things we did called the Let's Do It initiative thing. We had all the kids take pictures of themselves working in front of this poster. It's kind of a neat story. But anyway, all the fun that we have had, and there's this is a bunch of our teenagers, all those teenagers at one level or another have served in our church and helped out. All of that stuff is fun. You know, we got these goofy hats, and we put these goofy hats on, did all sorts of stuff. So all of that is the nurturing, fellowship, team building kind of thing. And don't forget that. Don't forget that. Let me jump to the last one here, and then we'll get to and this is probably the most important, and then we'll get a few Q&A questions if we have any. Vision, the idea of getting the vision out and letting people know what the objectives are. And then part of that is evaluation too. We have evaluation with our team. And on our little sheet here that you'll get, it talks a little bit about kind of how to do some evaluation at the bottom there. We won't spend too much time on that right now, just because we're kind of getting short on time. Okay, vision. Okay, here, let me just say, our vision for our workers, okay, is to, and I lost the last word in there, kind of bumped off somehow. Okay, but it works pretty good right there, to create an amazing local church. And the last word that's supposed to be on there is to create an amazing local church experience. We sat down for a long time, tried to figure out what would motivate the janitor. What would motivate the person that makes the cinnamon rolls? What would motivate the person that's setting up the signs a couple days before or a few hours before? What would motivate the person who is coming in and vacuuming and straightening up the chairs? What would motivate them, and what is their thing? Now with teachers, it's a little bit easier because like they're presenting the word of God, and it's like, yeah, you're going to change a life. But for a janitor, you know, or somebody that's in security, they're not necessarily doing that. And so we came up with this phrase. It took us actually like a whole weekend retreat. I took my senior staff away. We had a big, long retreat, and it took us a long time to come up with it. And I'm sorry the last word isn't there, but it's the idea of creating an amazing local church experience. And don't get scared with the word experience. We're not like, you know, crazy snake handling type experience, okay? Just the fact that people would come and they would just go, man alive, I have never been to a church like that. Okay. In fact, one of our goals, and I'll give this to you here.
Not be snake handlers, but I did attack one of my co-teachers with a sword once.
We have a lot of fun in our church. Yeah. One of our goals, and this is, I put this picture up here. This is front of our church on a Sunday morning, a lot of vehicles and stuff out there. Has to do with this kind of a goal. Okay. A young family comes to church for the first time. They walk in the door of your church. They are greeted properly. They can find the bathroom and the drinking fountain and the coffee. They find their way to the appropriate classrooms, whether it's adults or kids. There's friendly people. After the sermon starts, there's some good music. They get a good handshaking time. They get to meet other people. They get to talk with other folks. There's a vibrant, positive message to help them to, you know, grow. And it solves a problem in their life. In other words, every Sunday solve a problem. We talk about that. The message is good. There's a good call to action at the end. There's a place where you can put prayer requests down after church is over. They hang around and talk for a while. There's some refreshments for their kid who is probably getting hungry by now, but they can go get a yogurt or a carrot stick or a granola bar, something healthy. And then they walk out the door. Someone's at the door, you know, thanking them for coming. They go out, hop in their car, and the mom and dad sit in the car, and they look at each other. And before the guy puts the key in and turns ignition, he says to her, she says to him, wow. wow, that was an experience. I've never been to church like that before. That is where we're headed. Your workers need to be trained so that that type of thing happens. And we have had people go out in their car, go on Facebook and leave a review, say, I've never been to church like this before. That is what we're looking at, to create an amazing local church experience. But it takes training from your janitors to your security people, to your Sunday school people, to your prep people, to your sound people. All of that needs to happen. It is such a powerful thing. So we want to give vision. Okay, we want to teach objectives. And these are like the nuts and bolts things, like do this and don't do that. Okay, we want to give that. Our kid men, and this was our little logo we did last year for our training, 0 to 18 in the blink of an eye. And we made some T-shirts up with some of this. And again, a lot of that money gets donated and people buy. They love to buy our shirts, that type of thing. Here are team member expectations. Work one, worship one. In other words, we have 2 services. So you come to church, you're in a church, and then you work a service. This is kind of how it works. You're early to all events. Everybody is here 45 minutes early. That's pretty much a normal thing for us. We have people here way more than 45 minutes early. You will be involved in training and planning. Okay, you need to dress appropriate with logoed shirts and name tags. With our ladies, we make sure that their things aren't cut too low when they're working with the kids. And, we just train on all that stuff. Safety, sanitation, security measures. You're going to be trained on that. We want you to make visits and contacts. We want you, to be a member of our church. We want you to get in a small group. We want you to be involved financially and be a giver. We're going to do background checks. We're going to have signed workers agreements, and we're going to go through all that. All of these team member expectations are just super important, and you'll need to write some of these your own because they're going to be different at every church, but these are some of ours. And when we have our big training, we go through this. This is where we go through. And I don't just rattle through it quite that fast. I take my time and go through it. As a senior leader, I go through some of that. Okay. And all these people right there in that photo, they went through all this training and they heard all that and they signed off on those things and they had agreements for every one of their divisions. I'll kind of break one down for you here and give you a little bit better. This is our this idea of looking at the win, okay, and how do we get there? What is the win? Now, for our nursery, we call it the jungle here, okay? Our goal for our nursery, okay, it's not just to hold a baby, okay? Our goal is to have a meaningful conversation with a young mom. Let me say it again. It's our goal is to have a meaningful conversation. Okay, so the leadership shall seek for and rejoice in face-to-face moments of important mom talk. Okay, and I know there's guys too, but I'm just talking in general here. And we have a lot of moms that come and bring their babies, a lot of single moms, and we want to rejoice in that. Now we say, how many babies did you have? That's an important thing. We need to know the number. We had 7 or 10 or 15 or whatever happens to be, because we need to know the number of cribs and diapers and some of that. But the real rejoicing is when we have a meaningful conversation. Okay, and when we get this thing that what is important to a mom is important to us. So those are some objectives of our nursery, and we train this and we spend time going through this with our nursery workers so that they understand. So if they're there's one of our main nursery workers maybe having a conversation with a mom who comes in to pick up the baby, the other workers will hold that baby and stay later and talk with them or play with the kids so that there can be a conversation going on. Let me give you a couple other things here. So what does this look like? Okay. Workers are aware of start and finish times and the priorities. In other words, they know they need to be there at a certain time and how long they need to hang around afterwards, which really kind of takes us into what we call pre-time and hang time. If your church runs from, we'll say 11 to 12, your nursery workers need to be there way earlier and they need to stay way later. Okay. Now that way is up to you on how far that would be. For us, it's probably, 20 minutes on each side, because parents will come early, drop their kids off at the nursery, and then get into that conversation we're looking for. Okay. Or they will stay later. So our nursery workers know that it's not just like, poop, noon and we're out of here, that type of thing. So that you have strong pre-time and hang time. In other words, they know that. we also allow, and this a lot of churches probably wouldn't do this, but we do this. Okay, we have during service discussions. In other words, there oftentimes we've had a mother come in with a baby, walk into that nursery. It's 10 minutes after the church service has started, and she's just barely got to church on time and couldn't get the rest of the kids dressed, and she's just frantic, and there's tears coming down, her mascara's run. She tried to get dressed up, and she walks into that nursery and drops that child off there in the nursery. And the nursery worker there, the main one who is kind of wanting to get this conversation going, says, how are things going? And if that woman starts to open up and just pour her heart out, we believe that the Holy Spirit is involved in that conversation. And we let the Holy Spirit lead. And I told her, I said, don't tell her like, oh, you got to get out of here and get over to the church service. They're singing now, or they're going to, you got to get to the preaching. We believe that our nursery workers can be motivated by the Holy Spirit to minister to that lady. Now, if they're just talking about, the measles or the vaccine or the whatever, like send them to church. But if someone is pouring up and saying, man, my boyfriend left me and now I have these kids and and I don't know what to do. And there's the leading. We let them have that service time discussion and we rejoice in that. They might not even made it to the main preaching service, but that is okay. And the last thing is we want our nursery workers to hand out encouraging things like cards and books and Bible verses, and even contact our people during the week. Your nursery is often in a church, is often inbound. Everything that happens to the nursery workers is like, who comes in, who comes in, who comes in. We had 1, we had 2, we had 3, we had 4, whatever. But how about a nursery that has some outbound? How about a nursery that I called that lady this week and I reached out to that lady and I sent a text to that lady? And the nursery workers that are actually, hey, how's your baby? Is his earache, going away? That type of thing. We want that to happen. So that's what that looks like. Okay. We also have what it does not look like. In other words, we can't have worker distraction. We can't have worker tension. One of the biggest problems in a nursery, people on their smartphones. You can't be distracted in our nursery because you're watching those kids so someone else can have the meaningful conversation. So we don't have like just a rule that says don't touch your phone. We have a thing that says don't get distracted. You have a very important ministry here, and we don't want worker tension either. We've had that. We got to take care of that. No, it does not look like instant dismissal at noon. In other words, when the program's over, boom, take the kids out, hand them to the mom. What are they going to do? They're going to hop in their car and leave, okay? We want those parents to hang around as long as possible and have good conversation and talk. You don't hurry up and shut down, okay? And it doesn't look like no one knows what they're doing, okay? That lack of understanding and duty. So all of that is part of that, the visions and objectives and the evaluation stuff there. And again, you sit down with your team and have evaluations. So, boy, we whipped through that fast and finished as